ended at a cliff to the highway. So I would have gone on. I wouldn't have. Not only would I have not made the swimming hole, I would have died on the highway. I would have ran off the cliff and gone splat on the highway. And then I got to the hospital here in town, and mom and dad show up. My boss is there. The ER doctor is a surgeon that I ski race with as a master ski racer. He was in tears. He couldn't even work on me. The other ER doctor told him he had to go. No one would look me in the eye because I was a dead guy, and they all knew it. But I didn't know that. I didn't.
I want to stop you for a second because we've transitioned. This next part is.
I told you the burn thing would take a while.
No, I know, and I don't want to finish, but I've got a couple of questions about what we've covered so far. The first one, and I should have interrupted you sooner, was you describe. Clearly you've paid. You've given a lot of thought to this whole thing because you remember every detail, and obviously you should. So the time from the explosion, you went through in detail of running around in the house trying to get out of the house, and then
that was a flash, not an explosion.
Okay, yeah, and then made the decision to jump off the balcony. And then you roll down the hill and you catch the pine needles on fire and you run past your buddy. How much time are we talking about there? Is that 3 minutes?
45 seconds.
Yeah.
Less.
The detail that you use to describe every single second really is obviously, again, you've had some time to think about and recall all of it, obviously.
Yeah, I know. In the description that I give, it sounds like it took forever, but it was instant. Like I said, man, everything flashes super quick in your mind, and everything goes on.
This is a pretty heavy conversation. That we don't necessarily always go this gnarly on this podcast, but
well, I want everybody out there to know. Hey, please, listen, dudes. Everybody out there, if I was to croak tomorrow, all of you should high five each other because I've done stuff and lived a life that so many people only dream.
Well, so that's the point living. That I'm getting at, Paul, is that you've had some pretty radical setbacks in your life, and I think it does make sense to go through a little bit of the early time in the hospital because. I met you and we hung out and I started piecing together the story, but there's some pretty radical things happen to you when you're in the hospital. So cover a few of those, but then let's get on to how life kind of continues on for you. And here's the big. It's not even the transition to Baja. You're a 62-year-old guy who is still a kid, living life as full as you can, and. The other part to this, too, that I don't want to forget, you have been taking care of your mother, who is dang close to 100. Did you say that she's just turned 97?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're taking care of your mother and have been for, as long as I've known you, 20-something years, 18 years.
Passed away in 2000.
So let's circle back to some of the things that did happen in the hospital, because like I said, that was some profound stuff.
You're there. First off, you're there for a really long time. So when you're anywhere for a really long time, some really oddball things can happen. One of the things that happened is that when they, and this is probably the best story out of all of them, and we'll probably just leave it at this one. When you go to dressing change, they have in the Hubbard tank room, they got to drop you into a big old Hubbard tank and then scrub on you and get all the dead skin off, and that's I had 3 of those a day for 6 months. Each dressing change was 3 hours, so you're looking at 9 hours in just dressing changes. Not to mention the 2 hours of physical therapy where they rip apart everything they did in the dressing changes. So, you're constantly in a state of anxiety. When are they coming for me again? Because it is torture to have 3 or 4 people scrubbing on you on each side at one time. There's not enough morphine on the planet to stomach that. But I was smart enough to say, okay, hey, look you guys get an ice cold wet towel, wash rag wet towel, and I'll bite down on that. And I learned right away. They gave me a morphine bolus button, and I learned pretty quick, man, do not press that button while you're in here. You wait until they're done, and then you lay on that button and load it up at the end. So when you get back to your room, you have some little bit of relaxation. Otherwise, you're still anxious that they're coming for you again. Well, one night, so then, like I said, there's 3 shifts. The night shift was always the best shift because they knew what you'd been through the course of the day. Well, at one of the night shifts, they've brought me in. There's an I-beam across the roof with an electric motor. They hook bars up to that electric motor, hook it to your gurney, press a button, lift you up, slide you across the I-beam, and then lower you into the Hubbard tank. And there's 3 Hubbard tanks in this room, and they keep these rooms like in 100 degrees because nobody has a thermal barrier. Skin is your thermal barrier. Once that skin is gone, hypothermia will set in a heartbeat, and that'll kill you. So the water, 104-degree water, 100-degree room, and then the thermal blankets when you get out. And well, when an injured person is getting ready to be discharged, they bring a family member into that room to learn the wound care procedures for them at home. So there's a mom standing in the curtain watching her 16-year-old kid get worked on as they're sliding me across the I-beam. Boom, okay, pressing the button, they're lowering me in. And until you're in the water, you're not neutrally buoyant. You're heavy on your torso end, on your upper torso end. You're heavy there. Well, I can see the woman, and she turns white as a ghost, and she's like, I can see her like grip the curtain. She's out on her feet. I'm like, dudes, she's going. Both burn techs look over, see that she's passed out and is going to fall. Both dudes let go of my gurney and dive for her. They save her, but my gurney flips up, torso first, feet straight up to the sky. I slide off the gurney into the Hubbard tank underwater. I end up against the back wall in the sitting position with my top of my head 2 inches underneath the water. And I can't do nothing. I weigh 130 pounds now. I can't even lift an arm, right? I've atrophied into nothing. So all I can do is like blow bubbles underwater. I'm like, and I'm waiting for them. All of a sudden, they dive in and grab me by my armpits and pull me up. Oh, we're so sorry, Paul. We're so sorry. So they're like, dude, we're so sorry. We're not going to scrub you. We're going to throw the blankets on you and take you back to your room, call it good for tonight. One of the guys felt so bad, he's like, as soon as I'm done with this last dressing change, I'm going to bring a big old milkshake to your room, and we're going to watch a couple of movies. He did. We watched movies until 4 in the morning.
Wait a minute. So did the woman pass out because when she saw you, that's why she passed out? Why did the woman pass out?
Because she was watching her own son get abused.
Okay. Not abused, but treated.
In the other Hubbard tank.
Gotcha.
To learn how to do the wound care.
Gotcha.
And it was more than she was up to at that point. It was more than she'd seen or known about.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you again.
All the guys felt so bad, like 3 nights later, all of a sudden they show up in my room, like 2 of them show up in my room. It's like 5:30 in the evening. They shut the blinds, they shut the door, they bring a wheelchair in, and I'm like looking at them, I'm like, what the heck are you guys doing? They get a big old blanket, they put me in the wheelchair, they put the blanket over my head. And these are burn techs that worked in the unit. They kidnap me out of the unit, take me downtown Salt Lake to a Utah Jazz game, roll me right up into the handicap zone right up front, watch a Jazz game. It was the sickest thing ever, man. It was so cool.
So
those are just some of the things I've been through.
That's the perfect way to kind of shift gears here, and the point is that was roughly 30 minutes of a pretty dark time in your life. And
yeah, dark times can always. Here's something that I want all of your listeners to know about. Life is a roller coaster, and if you let the bottom end of that roller coaster take over you, you'll never make it back up to the top of the roller coaster. You'll run out of steam down there. Because of my situation, I do a lot of motivational speaking at the high school because we've got a suicide issue that's off the charts up here. So they'll call me into assemblies, and I mean, it's just a straight few word message. Don't let today determine your life. It's your life that determines your life. And if you're not in your life to determine your life, you missed out, bro. If you make a bad choice, if you're feeling like suicide is the right option today, go look in the mirror, take a step back and think, well, what about 6 months from now? How could things change then? Because there was a point in time where I was super suicidal. I was just over it.
So Paul, stop here. I want to interrupt because I heard, I've known you, I've seen your scars, and I ladies and gentlemen, Paul Robinson is scarred from the neck down. I mean, his body it's radical, and like I said, I got to
3rd degree and 4th degree burn.
I got to know you as a person, and we're good friends, and I've heard you tell these stories, but I didn't really put together how bad it was until you showed me the pictures. And again, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but the point that I'm trying to make is this is super serious stuff. This is a friend of mine who flatlined how many times on the table in the emergency room? Or in 2 times? 2
times on day 7. The first time for over 13 minutes, and the second time for a couple of minutes. But at that point, they had exhausted all their options and went with the bash of adrenaline through my chest cavity.
And I don't mean to be making light of any of this. The point that I'm getting at is that Paul has survived, and he's survived to a degree by making light of some of the stuff. And I didn't take it as seriously until I saw some of the pictures. And that's the point that I'm trying to make. So now, like I said, you're a 62-year-old guy that lives his life like he's still an 18-year-old. You're still downhill ski racing, surfing, driving race cars. Let's shift gears here. And I mean, that transition out of the hospital and back. You told me one time about the first time you went skiing. And I think there was some duct tape involved, or how did that play out?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, because I came off a ski team, people knew who I was. People expected me to come. Not only people, but I expected me. I expect a lot out of myself. And so I wasn't home 24 hours, and I had Joe Cordeau come over and my dad come over, and they both pried my boots open, and I stuck my feet down in my boots. And they drove me to the small ski hill called Dollar Mountain here in Sun Valley. And they duct taped my ski poles to my mittens. And there was a lot of the town came out for that because they knew I'd come home. They knew what was going on. So there's like 70, 80, 100 people at the bottom. All watched me just walk away from them, walk to the chair, get on the chair, go up to the chair, go up to the top by myself, get off the chair. I didn't know what was going to happen, but muscle memory is just muscle memory, and there's no way around that, even if it hurts. So I, pointed it and ripped off about 100 slalom turns, just like bam, 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 bam. Came skiing right up to the crowd sitting at the picnic tables and sprayed them. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Everybody was just like clapping. I was crying. Everybody was crying. People need to understand that adversity will hit all of us. No one escapes adversity in their life. It's just how you handle it. if you can say, okay, well, this is